Good day to all. As mothers and as teachers, we sometimes hear our children complain to us about pain in the neck, pain on the knees or other joints, and we generally tend to take them light at first. When children throw out such a complaint and then run away to play a little later, we easily assume that their concerns could be minor and neglect them. But it's extremely important that we understand when to treat these concerns seriously and look into them with urgency, because such pains in the joints could sometimes lead to a condition called arthritis even among children. That is why, in connection with the World Arthritis Day, observed on the 12th of October every year, we at the NGP school have arranged for an interaction with an eminent rheumatologist, Dr. Rajamani from the KMCH. With his extremely rich and vast experience in the field of rheumatology, both in India and in the United Kingdom, Dr. Rajamani is the most apt person to be in conversation with, to raise awareness of the symptoms connected to arthritis and to highlight the importance of its early diagnosis. In conversation with Dr. Rajamani is our student, Ms. Thanushhri of grade 12. I request Thanushhri to take over.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I now take great pleasure in hosting today's interview, Dr. Rajamani. A very warm welcome to you, sir, to the NGP School's Expert Talk series. It is indeed a great privilege and honor to be in conversation with you today, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for coming today and helping us create an awareness about the impact and existence of various joint and muscle conditions in young children. So before getting into the interview, I would like to ask you about rheumatology, sir. Can you please throw some light on this, sir?
First of all, I would like to congratulate the correspondent, Dr. Rajamani, the director, Madam Madhura, and principal, Madam Preeta, for conducting this very unique session where you expose the children and create an awareness about all the various muscle and joint problems that can occur in children. This is something unique because I don't believe this has done before, where the child can get an opportunity to raise their questions and queries. Coming to the question that Thanushhri first put to me, what is rheumatology and who is a rheumatologist? Rheumatology is a specialty which deals with bones, joints, and the associated conditions, whether be it ordinary or otherwise, both in children and adults. Just as you have a cardiologist for heart problems, a neurologist for neurological problems, we call this specialty rheumatology, and we are called rheumatologists. So a rheumatologist is one who deals with muscles, joints, soft tissue problems in all patients in general.
Okay, sir. So moving on to my next question. It is common for children these days to fall down and have muscle and joint pains from time to time. So what actually causes this, sir?
Well, when you talk about children falling down and they're having various injuries, what we need to think is what are the common conditions that predispose them to it. Now, when you start off with a child starting off from the age of 4 till the teens, there are a few conditions which predispose to it. Now, I'd like to go to the first commonest condition, which is called hypermobility. In other words, mobility means moving. Hyper is more, hypo is less. There is a condition which is quite common in children, but not well understood and recognized, which is called hypermobility syndrome, whereby the joint which is a structure which is connected by two bones, and this is connected by ligaments. Now these ligaments support these joints and make them move. What happens in this condition is, from birth, many children have lax or loose ligaments. In other words, their ligaments are not strong, like as an ordinary student would have or a person would have. And why is this ligament not strong? Because the ligaments contain a protein called collagen. And the type of collagen, which is a connective tissue because it connects tissues, the type of collagen you have is determined by genes. And genes are something that you get instructions from your parents and you pass it on. So some people have altered genes and thereby they have altered collagen, and hence this hypermobility produces lax ligaments. For example, if you can think of rubber bands, if you have two rubber bands on either side of your joint and this rubber band is nice and stiff, it holds your joints, it supports your muscles, it's nice and strong. But these children have loose ligaments. It's called hypermobility of the joints, where the joints move too much. So, right from childhood, you'll find that my joints are noisy, they click, my knees click, my shoulders click, and then they'll do this and it's all clicking and cracking. And they wonder what's doing this. This is hypermobility causing loose clicking of the joints. If your shoulder joint is loose, sometimes when you do that, it just comes out plonk, and then they put it back again. Or your kneecap goes plonk. And sometimes you'll find some children, they're bending backwards, they're bending sideways, because they have this hypermobility. In addition to the ligaments getting thin and weak, the muscles also become floppy. So this condition is not a disease, it's something that you inherit. Many children have it, and then they have these pains associated with it, where you fall down, as you mentioned, you slip, you have injuries, So what should you do about it? You should make sure that you don't overstretch yourself. Now you start doing and you overstretch yourself, you find that you start getting aches and pains. All right? What's more important is your posture. You've got to make sure, because your legs will go on one side, this leg will go on that side, and that leg will go on side. You've got to make sure you walk straight. Usually when we walk, we are not conscious about our walking. But those who have hypermobility should be conscious that they're walking straight, their knees are not bent, so they should be taught how to do that. Then, what can you do about these loose ligaments? You have to strengthen the muscle around the joints. So the more you strengthen, then what happens is the joint becomes stronger. So initially, you should not do all these different kinds of exercises that they describe in physiotherapy. Too much of stretching is too bad. You do low impact exercises, swimming, cycling. Once your muscles become strong, then you can go and play netball or whatever. Okay? So this is very important. The posture is important, and physiotherapists will tell you what to do and what not to do. So here's a condition which is quite common, and you just take simple painkillers. Now, a word about painkillers is that, mothers are very worried about giving children painkillers. Simple paracetamol is okay, ibuprofen is okay, but there's a medicine called aspirin. One should be very, very, very careful and, if possible, avoid giving aspirin to children because it can produce some serious consequences. Although it's a very good medication for other reasons. So one of the conditions which causes injuries, etc., is this hypermobility syndrome.
Oh.
Now, there's one other condition which, while we're on this, there are many children between the ages of 4 and 12, 14 who have pains all over their legs. Muscle pains. They wake up at the night, they get cramps, they're crying all through night. In the day, they are fine. As they grow, they get this what is called growing pains. It's quite common. That's because, they've been introduced to school, they go out into the playground, they play a lot, they want to do what the other person, so it's overuse. The more you use, at the end of the day, the muscles become painful, stiff. It's called growing pains. So what you do is for that condition, again, simple painkillers, but more important there, unlike the previous condition where you should not stretch, here, what the mothers can do is good massage and stretching. So you need to differentiate what is the reason for this. Because again, this is not a disease. Most children have it. Mothers are worried because it's usually at night, child is crying. Simple painkillers, massage, stretching. So you know the difference between that and that. Thirdly, coming to this injury bit. So in between the tissues, you have little sacs which contain fluid. You might have heard of bursa, B-U-R-S-A, bursa. So you have little sacs here, little sacs here. So when you fall, you twist your leg, you twist your foot. These bursa get inflamed. They are painful. You see? So in that situation, after prolonged exercise, etc., you can get that, but that's not a serious condition. That will go away with some cold sponges, some medication, etc.
Okay, so thank you so much. That was definitely really informative. So my second question to you will be that I've read that arthritis is derived from the Greek word arthro meaning joint and itis meaning inflammation. So what exactly is this condition, sir? Can you please let us know more about arthritis in general?
See now, itis, I-T-I-S, is inflammation. When it's in the joint, it's arthritis. When it's in the nerve, it's neuritis. So it's itis just means it's inflammation wherever that structure is. Okay? Now, there we have to differentiate between itis, which is inflammation, and something which is not inflammation. Now, if you get joint pain here, and there is no inflammation, we call it arthralgia. Whereas when you have joint pain, which is inflamed and swollen and tender, that is arthritis. So somebody who has joint pain does not necessarily mean he's got arthritis. The simple terminology is arthralgia. Okay. How do you know that a person has got arthritis? Arthritis gives you tender, swollen joints. What do I mean by tender? When I touch you there, it's painful. It could be these joints, it could be here, it could be here, it could be here. So, now there are children, small proportion of children develop tender, swollen joints, which is a disease by itself. Okay? Now, what causes this? One, it can be genetic, where, as I said, the instructions from your parents come through. Secondly, is an autoimmune condition. When I say autoimmune, what happens is, when you have bacteria or virus coming into your body, your white cells get alert, they go and fight it and get rid of it. That's normal immunity. Your body is strong, it fights that. But whereas what happens is, in autoimmune diseases, your body sends wrong signals and starts fighting the healthy cells. Instead of fighting the abnormal cells, it fights the healthy cells. So that produces certain chemicals, which produces changes in your joints and causes inflammation. And that can be genetic, or it can be due to infection. For example, you had a virus called chikungunya. Now we have COVID, and then you have bacterial infections. Infections can also trigger a response which can produce chemicals producing arthritis. So some patients with having had chikungunya, about a year ago they can have arthritis. There are a few who come now after COVID, you have a bit of arthritis. So that's also not immune. For example, somebody who has a sore throat due to bacteria, streptococcus. It's not common now, but it used to be common because nowadays doctors treat it very well. But if you leave it untreated, Later on, you get what is called rheumatic fever, which gives you rheumatic arthritis. So arthritis is a condition where you have these joints, which gets tender and swollen. In children, there is a different variety of arthritis. There are about 6 varieties. First and foremost, it is not contagious. When you see your friend who's got arthritis, don't be scared, it's not contagious. 2, the most important thing that children should know is you can live with arthritis, it can be treated very well, they can lead a normal life, they can go out to the playground and do play what they want, and carry on like any other normal person. That's the most important thing, because unlike many years ago where there were no proper treatment facilities, today a child with arthritis can lead a normal life. But when you say arthritis, when you have someone with tender swollen joints, there could be other conditions which you should not miss. Okay? And that's where the rheumatologist comes in. You need to go and see a rheumatologist because you've got to make sure, is it not hypermobility? Is it not growing pains? Is this arthralgia? Or is it arthritis? But when you have more other symptoms, such as prolonged fever, skin rashes, eye problems, skin problems, together with it, then you can get other autoimmune conditions. And one of them is called lupus. It's one of the autoimmune conditions. And hence, among the different types of arthritis, one should also be sure that you're not missing something else. For example, when you go to the doctor, he will do blood tests. And a simple, ordinary blood test can tell you that this is a blood problem which is causing the arthritis. This is another autoimmune problem causing arthritis. So it's very important when you have tender, swollen, inflamed, hot, painful joints, that's inflammation, and that needs to be seen by the rheumatologist. So you can exclude all this and treat it appropriately. How do you treat it? You do simple blood tests, you do simple x-rays, you can do scans, and these are all, the child does not need to be afraid of all this because these are all simple procedures, they do not hurt. You just go and lie there, you have a scan. And as for treatment, treatments are available. The doctor will always tell you, and the mother is always concerned, do these medications have side effects? Can you take it for so many years or so many months? Not to worry about that. Because you can tailor the treatment according to the needs of individual patients. So did you get a gist of the arthritis? Now,
yes.
When you have arthritis, the most important thing is 2 things. We refer them to a physiotherapist. Who is a physiotherapist? A physiotherapist is one who teaches you what you can do and what you should not do. How to protect your joints, hot, wax, paraffin, how to improve your mobility. That's what the physiotherapist will do. And it's crucial. You see, although it's common sense, which is uncommon, you need to see a physiotherapist so that more important than what to do, you need to know what not to do. And there are experts who teach you. Then we have what is called the occupational therapist. And that's even more important for a child. Because these children, when they keep writing the exams, they can't write because the fingers are painful. They can't go upstairs, they can't go downstairs. And they're taking medication. But one should not think that medicines are going to solve your problem. They will not. Occupational therapist is very important because they will tell you, hey, this pen is not suitable for you. Maybe your pen should be a bit bigger. The way you hold your pad should not be like this. Maybe if you hold it like this, it will be easier for you to write. And then at night, because you get these pains after the exam, you go home, and they'll give you little splints and braces to support your joints. And they give you some very useful information, which you can protect your joints and be ready for the next day. So physiotherapists and occupational therapists are very important because as you go through all that they teach you, it gives you more confidence that you can lead a normal life.
So my next question to you is, I've read that people at a young age, when they fall down and when they get muscular pains or injuries, that could actually later develop into arthritis as they grow older. So is this true, sir?
The answer is it is true. But we need to prevent it. And can it be prevented? The answer is yes. So I go back to my very first two things. One is the hypermobile joints. Here is someone whose joints are flexible. They are more prone to damage. They can get sprains, injuries, slips, falls. Yes. So those repeated injuries, if not addressed properly at that time, can damage the joints and lead on to what is called wear and tear. The other word for that is osteoarthritis. So yes, injuries, soft tissue injuries, or joint and bone injuries should be attended properly and not just be ignored with it should be properly attended so that you prevent what you refer to as wear and tear type of osteoarthritis. But injuries by themselves will not lead to inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid. Correct?
Yes. Thank you, sir. Sir, another thing I wanted to ask related to this question is that what are the immediate steps that could be taken as soon as injury takes place in a young child?
Well, it depends on the injury, isn't it? Because if you have an injury and you slip and fall and you have a tendon bursitis or something, yes, you immobilize. You take them to the side, make sure they are protected from their environment. You don't crowd around the person, And you see, if you think that the pain is severe, don't overdo it. See, the injury, what seems to be mild outside, could be more serious inside. And you are mobilizing it, you might just displace a crack. Okay? So it's very important that when somebody has an injury, you give them painkillers, you protect them, and then move them to the nearest first aid place where they can be looked at, examined, and then appropriate treatment given. Because there are people who have injuries, they fall on the floor, and they have a neck injury, and they're lifted. No, you have a problem. You should never assume, I know common injuries are common, but if the person is in a lot of pain and if even slight movements induces worse pain, you've got to assume that there's something going on inside. Precaution is important.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Sir, we are all aware that maintaining a good bone health is super duper important. So can you give us some tips on that, sir?
Well, that's a very good question because bones are built up as a child. You have to consider the bone as a bank. You put money in the bank, it's deposited, and you use it 10, 15 years later. So building your bone in childhood is the most important. That's a very good question because that's what grandmother did. That's what grandmother said. See, there's something called peak bone mass. In other words, till the age of 18, 16 to 18, sometimes 20, you keep on building bone. And so that's the best time to build bone. And if you don't build bone by then, if your peak bone mass is not as it should be, when you come to the age of 50, 55, you have a chance of getting what is called osteoporosis, thinning of the bones, where you slip, you fall, you crack. So it all depends upon how much of peak bone mass you had, and that will also determine whether you're prone to a fracture later on in life. Of course, there are other factors, the hormonal factors, menopause and all that stuff, right? But this is crucially important. So you have to build your peak bone mass. How? Only three things: calcium, vitamin D, and most of all, the first thing is exercise. So you have to make sure that your calcium intake is enough. You need plenty of vitamin D because you need vitamin D to absorb that calcium, because otherwise it doesn't get absorbed, right? So, what are the sources of calcium and vitamin D? And I put it down because I thought I might forget myself. Now, there are vegetarians, there are non-vegetarians, it depends. But the best source of calcium, dairy products. When I say dairy products, milk, cheese, yogurt. Grandmother said that, milk, cheese and yogurt. Beans, nuts. Of the nuts, people, when it comes to protein, your peanuts are good. But better than that in general, almonds are the best. Almonds are the best. Of course, green leafy vegetables. When I talk about green leafy vegetables, we are not talking about the ordinary spinach we call kira. We're not talking about that because that does not increase your calcium. We are talking about other types of green leafy vegetables. Okay? Then, as I mentioned, if you're using peanut butter or water, almond butter is better. These are the source of calcium. Egg yolk, of course. Now comes to vitamin D. If you're a non-vegetarian, the best source is fish and fish oils. Okay? Then, of course, yogurt, milk, and cheese. No doubt about that. Now, mushrooms. Now, very important. You shouldn't just go and buy a kilo of mushrooms tomorrow and start eating. That's not the way to do it. You got to do it in steps. When it comes to juice, carrot juice and orange juice. Good source of vitamin D and calcium. Important to take adequate account in one form or the other. So here, diet and then keeping yourself active. Activity is very important. Going out, at least in the playground, playing every day, improving your muscle strength. So you have to increase and build up your peak bone mass. So that when you come to 60, 65, you won't break your bones.
Thank you, sir. I will definitely keep that in mind. So my next question is that, are there any foods that are particularly recommended for the patients diagnosed with arthritis?
Yeah. Now, again, see, when you ask a direct question, are there any foods that help arthritis, worsen arthritis? See, there have been a lot of research studies done. And so there are studies which are for and against. But in general, you see, I am going to tell you something which in moderate amounts have been proven to prevent inflammation. Inflammation causes arthritis. So I'm going to just go through some of this, and which means that what it means is it can contribute and aggravate or it can lessen. Now I put this down because there are, very important here, there are certain foods that contribute and aggravate. The first one is sugars, particularly applicable to children. If a child has arthritis, too much of candy, soda, ice cream, these sugary beverages definitely aggravate pain. Not that the child should not take it, but in moderation. It's not something you should avoid, but in moderation. Okay. Secondly, you must have heard of gluten. Gluten intolerance is something that is a protein, and wheat and barley contains gluten, and there is proof that cutting down on wheat and barley in some can alleviate pain and reduce the inflammation. The third one is applicable to children, which is processed foods, your fast food, your baked foods. So you're going to have a pizza today, tomorrow your joints may take a bit more. But these are only in some individuals, not all. And again, I'm stressing the point that I'm not saying you should avoid these completely, but in moderation. Okay? Now, when it comes to oil, there's a lot of talk about which oil. You have certain omega-6, omega-3, but the oils that are recommended, particularly which are found to have influence on the inflammation of the joints, are soya bean oil, sesame seed oil. You know this sesame seed? Alana.
Yes.
Yeah, mustard seed. Now, when it comes to carbohydrate, no doubt, white rice, white bread, and of course potatoes. Right? So what we were saying was, apart from other foods, when you heat your food in very high temperatures, very high microwave, grilled, fried foods, there are products called AGEs, which are chemicals that can produce inflammation. So it's very important not to have food cooked in very high temperatures. Okay. Then those who are fond of red meat, they should try and reduce their intake of beef and pork, etc. So these are the common things that have been linked to inflammation. They are said to contribute and to aggravate inflammation. On the other hand, I should also say what are the good foods. Okay, fish very high in vitamin D. Now garlic, ginger, turmeric, and green tea. There's a lot of talk about it, and it's true. There is some evidence that it does have anti-inflammatory properties. There is some evidence that green tea itself has some protective properties for cartilage, which is in between the joints. So I think that's useful to have in your regular use because it has anti-inflammatory and also what is called antioxidant and immune. It protects your immunity. Now, as for in specifically in terms of fruits, the berries, most of the berries, including strawberries, blackberries, grapes, they are useful. And I mentioned earlier, when it comes to oils, in terms of anti-inflammatory properties, olive oil is said to have some anti-inflammatory.
Okay, thank you, sir. So my next question is that there is a common belief that people staying in colder places are more prone to arthritis. So is there some kind of a connection between climate and arthritis, sir?
Yes, you see that though staying in cold countries or cold places like Ooty and Kannur and Nilgiris where the temperature is very cold, it does not cause arthritis. But those staying in those areas, you find that they have more symptoms and the symptoms are aggravated by this. Now, you don't have to go and stay in Ooty for that. If you sit in your house in Coimbatore and you switch on the AC and put it on full gear at a low temperature, the next morning your joints will pain. So yes, a cold temperature, wherever it is, can aggravate symptoms and make your joints more stiff. So what I do recommend, there are patients who come from Ooty and who are unable to bear this, and we don't like them to change their designation or the place where they are, but sometimes they are forced to do that because it's their health. I know livelihood comes first, but in terms of health, that's useful. Because what happens is, some children go up to Ooty, Kannur and go to one of these nice schools there. The children can't stay there because the arthritis won't let them stay there. So yes, it does happen.
Thank you, sir. So thank you so much. I have learned a whole ton of information today, and I'm sure that our viewers too have gained a lot of knowledge with regard to arthritis. On behalf of the NGP school, I once again thank you for your support and for the time you've spent with us today, sir.
I'm very thankful for having been given this opportunity to be here, and I'm very happy that this has come from children. And it's a different format altogether, and I'm very thankful.